So, hello everybody, and welcome to Decluttr Me, a podcast about organizing and decluttering your life. And hey, Shelina,
Hi, Shrek. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm not bad. Yeah. It's a nice sunny day. Oh wait, we live in Dubai. It's always
It's
sunny.
a 40-degree day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a
Um,
hot week.
it is. Yeah, we're in the middle of summer now, so it's
Yeah.
something we have to just deal with for the next couple of months. And
Yeah, yeah.
and
Just suck it up.
unfortunately, in most cases at this time we'd be talking about either where you've gone or where you will be going, but that's not
No, it's
an
not
option this
happening.
year.
So
So
we just have to talk about how hot it is, how many showers we have to have during the day because we go outside and it's too hot.
yeah.
And this is our lives. Welcome to Dubai.
Welcome to Dubai. So last week you interviewed Sarah Bickers, right? So she's a professional
Yes.
organizer, but she focuses on a specific. She's specialized in dealing with people who are diagnosed with things like ADHD.
Yep,
Um,
that's
so
correct.
so what did you learn? What was new in that episode?
Um, It was fascinating to find out that actually I think a few of my clients have ADHD, maybe not diagnosed, but they have the traits of it. So that was interesting to hear her talk about her clients and how to deal with these kind of clients. And I was like, oh, I might be doing this already. Um, and also it was good to hear about her, the methods she used, the tips and tricks. And especially, she had those post-it notes at the back of her, and we asked about that. And she mentioned it was the Kanban method. So that was really interesting because I haven't heard of it before. And she shared a video with me afterwards, which we'll share today with our viewers in the show notes. But I thought it might be good to talk about that because, I've looked more into it and I know you actually use it, which I didn't know. So, it's another way of being more productive. And she uses it in one way and she uses it as a visual tool to help people because people with ADHD, um, they need to have that visual stimulus to help them, do the task, to get organized, to do the day-to-day things in their life. But how do you use it?
So for context, it's important to remember as well. Like, so obviously, I come from a tech background, and this is as a method. It's used a lot in software development. Like that's kind of where it became really popular, and
Mm,
it expands a little bit more than just the Kanban method, which is the idea of visualizing what you're doing,
yeah,
but then also looking at it from a team perspective, which is where I use it as well, even today. As a way of visualizing as a team what you're working on and stuff. So one of the things I think that I really like about this is, and this is true by the way, even of a regular to-do list, is often on a project you don't actually know everything that you're going to be needing to do
right.
upfront, right?
Okay.
So you tend to discover that as you break things down. So at a high level, you can take, and I'll give a software development example, but at a high level, we can be like, okay, we're going to design an application. It's going to have a user menu and and a cart and a product page and something, right? But then as you break it down, you suddenly realize that, oh, by the way, I also have to build a payment card system, and then I also have to allow the users to do a password reset system. And I'm using very simple examples. These are things we tend to know in advance. But the idea is there's a lot of things that you discover as you go through. And I think anybody that works on any kind of project discovers this. And the downside of using a to-do list for some of this stuff is it's very hard to visualize, right? So you have a to-do list which comes to you as a list of things to do, and you keep adding things to the bottom of that list, and you're just getting overwhelmed like the more that's happening. And
Yeah,
so
very true.
where the Kanban method comes in, and then sort of the expansion of it, which is like something called Scrum, which you do as a team and things like that, which is a rugby term, of course, but is the idea that you visualize the different tasks that need to be accomplished, and at what stage the tasks are in the chain of the project, right? And so what
Mm,
happens is, I mean, again, to use the development example, is you might have something that says, okay, these are things we need to do.
yeah,
But then there's like, this one is in a first development stage, or this one is in a testing stage. This one is in could be like is a user testing stage versus an internal testing stage. This one is in a bug fixing stage. This one is a quality control stage. It could vary, right? But what
yeah,
happens when you start doing that is you start seeing from a capacity point of view, how many things are being worked on in parallel and at what level. right? So
Right.
if you
Yeah.
have a testing team that's doing something, and you notice on the board right away that like, wow, there's 7 things they're doing. There's no way they're doing all 7 of those, which means this is not what's being worked on, which means a couple of those things need to be moved into the pile, the total stockpile, and it's not
Mm.
actually what's being worked on. But what happens as a process is actually you move things into the queue only when you can work on them, and everything
Right.
else just sits in that sort of original stockpile just by itself. But at any
Right.
given time, you have visibility. So if you talk about what I do today, when obviously, as you know, I produce multiple shows, and each episode is in
It does.
different
It does.
stages, right? So each episode comes in a different stage. So sometimes something is just recorded, sometimes something is just scheduled, like we haven't even gotten to the recording, but we know it's coming.
Yeah.
And then sometimes some things are recorded, but they haven't been edited yet, and so on. And so there's different stages in the chain of an episode that goes through, but then each one belongs to a different project and so on. So the idea of visually sort of looking at, so the board that we have set up is the one that you can actually see color coded, which shows something belongs to, what stage of the episode sort of cycle that they're on, and then you kind of know who's working on them, right? These things can all be assigned to. I mean, I use to kind of I use a text system, right? So Sarah's thing is based on sort of using a post-it note system, and this is, I think, what
Yeah.
even if you look at the dev companies and stuff, this is kind of what they do when they're all sitting in an office together, right? So they can have a big board in the corner, and they can kind of
Ah,
work off of post-it notes, right, to see where
right.
everything is in a stage.
Yeah.
Obviously, I work a lot more remotely, and so that's not exactly the easiest thing to do. So I use a service called Trello to accomplish this.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I've heard
Trello
of
is
Trello.
Trello is that works the same way. It's meant to be a project management tool, but it does things in the form of these boards, right, in the Kanban board. And
Mm.
so you can design what the list should be. You can design your different cards. You can define what category and color each card belongs to, who it's assigned to if you want to assign it to somebody. And
Mm.
in the case of episodes, what I also do is I use the task manager tie-in to that. So I actually
Right.
assign dates to when episodes, we know, because we kind of know the schedule, like, that a show is going to put out a new episode on Wednesday or every second Wednesday, which means this episode is going to be the one that goes on that Wednesday or that date. And we kind
Okay.
of mark it. So I can quickly look at a calendar as well. I can just shift views to look at a calendar to see, like, okay, where are we on the ones we need to work on? And are we cutting it too close? Or, where are we? But
Yeah.
the biggest thing is the visualization, right? So to be able to see, oh, we have so much stuff in production versus so much stuff that's just sitting in the bank. And if there's too much stuff in production, we know we're not accomplishing it, right? Because the team is finite and the number of people working on stuff is limited.
All right. Well, that's fascinating because I have found, and while you were talking about it and how you use it, I just realized that I watched a program on Disney Plus about making a Frozen 2. And I
Right.
have a feeling they use the same system because they had a big board and then the amount of days before, the release date and blah, blah, blah. And I think they use the same method
Yeah.
in a way, which is, and they had a computer program as well, but
Correct.
they had the board up with all the
Mm.
stuff. So, yeah, it's just fascinating. So many different people and different reasons to use this system.
Yeah.
And, I have seen it, but not, put a name to it and, realize fully what it was.
Right.
So that's fascinating to see that you can use it in different ways within your life. You use it for production, Disney use it for production,
Yeah.
Sarah uses it for a day-to-day life and to show her clients how to use it. So that's so interesting for me. And it is great, and I am a fan of visualization. I
Yeah.
use mind maps to do my planning, which is another way of visualizing because it's color coded. But yeah, I mean, with Sarah's, she had that the options was could do, doing, and done.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah. And so hers was, all the could do, and then she moves, the ones that are the priority into the doing. And then once it's done, goes into the done and then reviews it every week. And that's great, I think, for a lot of people who want to get organized. And they can use Trello if they want to do it
Yeah, they
digitally.
can actually. So Trello actually has the baseline tier is free. So you can
Right.
go in, you can create an unlimited number of boards, and then an unlimited number of things. The limitations are on like the extra integrations that you can do, But I mean,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
like, so as an example, I mean, obviously we're using it for work, and that's a different story. But
Yeah.
you're allowed only one integration. So if you integrate just the calendar, then that's all you get. You can't integrate with other services, let's say. But
Right.
for an individual, I think that's good enough. And if the
That's
free tier
fine. Yeah.
is very powerful, like there's no limitation on the number of cards you have, the number of lists you make, or whatever, right? Which is great, I think. I think Sarah's put kind of like a very. It was good because it was kind of give you an idea of saying this is in a simple form. This is how
Yeah.
you can use it, right? And
Yeah.
in her case, the focus is on that doing list, right? So
Yeah.
at any given time, you don't get overwhelmed by that like could do list because it looks like there's a lot going on there. But you look at the doing list and you're like, I've got these two things to work on right now, and nothing else matters. And I work on
Yeah.
that, and only when if you figured out that your capacity is two things at a time, what happens is until you move one thing out of the doing list into the done list, you don't bring
Yeah.
another thing into the doing list. And sort of that's
Yeah.
kind of like how
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
manage that capacity, so to speak, right? So
Yeah.
and larger teams do the same way. So a good and I know this is like a bit of a funny example, but a good so the show Silicon Valley, which ran on HBO, which again
Yes. Yeah.
is based on the building of a tech company. I
Yeah.
think in their first season, when they first kind of branch out and start doing it, and then the business operations guy finally gets involved, and so he institutes this exact system, right? So he then
Oh,
creates a
really?
board. Yeah, he creates a board with post-it notes and says, okay, these are everything we have to do, color coded by where in the system architecture it's important, right? What's on the server side, what's on the
Yeah.
client side, and so on, and what's design versus database or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is actually is the way they work on it is the team is sitting kind of near the board. When someone is ready to work on something, he goes, picks up the post-it note of what he's working on, moves it
And
there
puts
to, and marks it as I'm taking care of this now.
right.
And so everybody's only working on one thing at a time and not
Yeah.
trying to work on too many things because it's very clearly defined and visually, for someone like a manager to come in and just take a quick look and see where everything is. Are things moving gradually in the right direction? Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want. And I think this is
Yeah.
something a to-do list can't accomplish. So if I were to do a to-do list of all the episodes that I need to produce, like, I would be really overwhelmed very quickly, but I would
Yeah.
not really be able to see if something is getting stuck somewhere or if I need to work, if something's due and the task that needs to happen before it, so either the recording or whatever.
Yeah. But I think
It would just be crazy.
yeah, but I think, I mean, this is one system to use, and it's good for for teams or if you need that visual stimulus. And so there's different methods. I mean, I use to-do lists, as we've talked before. So it just depends on what's the best method for you. I mean, this actually sounds like a good method. It's just trying to find a board and a wall to put it up on, for me. So
Yeah,
that's
sure.
just too much. And
I
for
mean, for that,
me,
the digital options exist as well, right? They're useful
yeah,
for that. Yeah.
yeah. And for me, it would be clutter on my wall, which I wouldn't be happy about. Whereas some other people would be like, no, actually, that's not clutter, that's helpful. So
Yeah.
it just depends on what you can handle on a visual basis. And yeah, the digital option would be better for me because I'm a digital girl now with these kind of apps.
I think
All
if yeah, I think if you have to look at like a kind of a difference maybe or kind of a way to segregate like where to. Like, by the way, I use a to-do list too, and we talked about that like a couple
yeah,
episodes ago, right? Like it's not like I don't do that because there are things I need to do outside of like producing episodes that I need a task list to maintain.
yeah,
I think the difference for me is like when you're working on a project, and it doesn't have to always involve multiple people, but a project that requires or things that require a few stages.
mm,
And there's like a lot of things happening, right? So there's different moving parts. So in my case, it's different shows and sort of where they are
yeah,
in the chain. For
yeah,
other people, it may be other things. For these things, like a to-do list gets overwhelming because if I have to create a to-do list for every task, I need to have like 6 subtasks. Whereas
yeah,
in a Kanban board, I have to take that task and just move it across the 6 lists. And you
yeah.
see that
So
there's a big difference between the two options. So one works really well in one, and the other stuff works really well in the other.
yeah. And so I think, for our listeners, if it sounds like it's something that you can use, you can check out the video that we'll share from Sarah showing how to do it. You can also, obviously Google and see all the different options that are out there and how it's used. Or you can get in touch with us and we can help you get organized, and I'll bring Chirag as well with me to help you out as well.
Yeah, why not? So to do that, of course, you can reach Shelina on social media. So that's at Decluttr Me, which is at DECLUTTRME. On her website, that's decluttrme.com. As always, you can find all the episodes of the show in your favorite podcast player. You can also look up decluttrme.com/podcast to see them. And if you're enjoying the show, give us a review. You can find us again in Apple Podcasts to do that. You can do that on IMDb now. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we're on IMDb now. This is like so cool.
No,
we're
yeah.
with like actors and actresses. I think we're listed. I'm listed as an actress now on IMDb, aren't I, or
Yeah,
something?
the way IMDb does its listing at the moment, even whether it's a podcast or otherwise, like everything's a show, and so a show has
Yeah.
actors in it. It's just that you are acting as you're not acting, but you're
As
yourself.
myself.
Yeah, you're yourself. But by the way, that's it's the same for talk shows, right? Like late night talk shows, when celebrities make appearances on them, they get credit for it, but they get credit as self, right?
Yeah.
They're not playing a character.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it is.
No.
But yeah.
This is us in real life. We're not a character.
Exactly. Well, anyway, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.